What's good, y'all? Making the Walk podcast and Bad MMA Math back at you again. We're going to talk about a few things, but we're going to jump into this yay or no. But before we do that, I actually wanted to shout out some people who jumped in the comments, left some interesting comments. And actually, there are people that, not all of them, but some of the people I think came from Bad MMA Math. Which I definitely appreciate you kind of tapping in with us. But let me see. Let me pull them up here. So the first one is the Fight franchise. And they said, great listen and podcast. Can't wait for more episodes from you both. And that's somebody that you're familiar with, right?
Yeah, we did like a long 2-hour breakdown of like the greatest strikers in the UFC, which was, like I said, it was a mixed bag, but it was so fun to do. He's someone that I connected with recently through the platform as well. Just a really good dude. Some really good insight as well. So seeing him up on that was nice as well. It was nice to get a comment from him because I kind of appreciate a lot of the stuff he does as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And he knows his shit. So like, I can definitely appreciate that. Another comment was from Vinny Souza. 147. He said, really enjoyed this one. Sub for me personally, I agree that there are more fights for Islam, all of which he steamrolls, and this has got me more hyped for the last card of the year. So definitely appreciate that from him.
Nice and gentle
that's
for us
another
as
one.
well.
Yeah. And then this last one, this one had me cracking up. He said, this is from Miles G9924. You definitely know this dude. He said the Aldana Rosa call was really prophetic, their boys, which he was right. Because yes, I opened my big mouth and said that was going to be the most boring fight of the night, and was the
It's a bit
total
unlucky.
opposite.
You were so close. You were so close there.
It was the total opposite. So you nailed the KO of the night, like spot on. And I
almost spot on.
I nailed this
almost
one. Well, almost.
It was like asked to the side. I'll take it.
It's close enough. But this one I nailed in the complete opposite direction. And Miles G called me out on it. I appreciate you calling me out on it because you were absolutely right. But I appreciate I appreciate you jumping and leaving.
I tell you something. No one picked that for fight of the night. So I give you, I don't think anyone can go too hard.
We had to pick somebody. And the caveat was we didn't want any fight to be a dud. So I didn't want that to happen. So whatever. But I appreciate the comments, man, and everything that everybody's putting in. Definitely leave more. But for this segment, we're going to jump into one of the favorite things that we like to talk about, which is yay or nah. This is I keep wanting to say brilliant because that's what British people say all the time.
Brilliant.
It sounds so classy when y'all say it. So, but it is a brilliant segment that you came up with. So we got a few things we're going to jump in. We're going to decide yay or no, how we feel about it. So the first one is, can trash talk go too far, or is everything fair game? Obviously, we know what we're talking about. We're talking about trash talk. We're talking about the greats of the game when it comes to trash talk. We're talking about Chael Sonnen. We're talking about Conor McGregor. We're talking about Colby Covington and the shit that he said. Ian Gary, people like that. So I'll let you get the first crack at this one. How do you feel about trash talk? Can you go too far with it?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, Personally, I think that like any level of trash talk is part of the game. It sells a fight, builds a little bit of intrigue. It's really important as well in kind of helping us to get to know more about fighters' mindset, and at times you get interesting little tidbits into their personal lives. That it kind of helps us, and I feel like I admit that the gambler inside me is talking a little bit, and a sadist a little bit. Some fighters use it to gain an advantage. So you mentioned Conor and Aldo. That's probably the most prominent example of all time.
Yeah.
And I think psychological warfare can help to tip the balance. Especially if you risk going too far, as it recently did, in the Covington Edwards situation. Covington ended up facing backlash, which arguably affected his performance. I will add a caveat though. I think it ultimately comes down to, if you're willing to engage in any level of trash talk, any level, even small little digs, you should not act like a soy boy pussy when you get it back harder than you get it, as kind of what happened with Strickland. So all in all, with like the public opinion out there, any level of trash talk is fair game, as it can be like equally an advantage or detriment. And it's proven to be important in shaping the outcome of a fight and what fans think of you. And ultimately, freedom of speech should take precedence in any situation. And a lot of the time, it's just a fucking hilarious train wreck as well. So we don't want to lose that aspect of the game either.
It's true. That's true. And like I kind of go back and forth on it, because like on one hand, as a person who's, you know, the consumer of this information and the consumer of this entertainment, it's entertainment, you know, like the stuff that, you know, I made a whole ass video on the Colby Covington thing, you know, so like this entertainment drives the content that we create. But definitely, I do know that if I were Leon, I would have wished that he didn't say that. If I were Fabian Edwards, I would have wished that he didn't say that. You know, there's or Ian Gary wearing Jeff Neal's mugshot. That doesn't bother Jeff Neal. He actually mentioned that in an interview with Ariel Helwani just the other day, that it didn't really bother him. Like, it was below the belt, but like it didn't really bother him as much.
Nah, it wasn't too.
But like for me, if somebody walked around with my mugshot on their t-shirt and started selling t-shirts with my mugshot, like I'm gonna be pissed. So I kind of waffle back and forth on it, but I feel like the line is, don't bring people's families, you know, innocent bystanders into it. Like, you could talk tons of trash about me personally, because I'm the one that's going to be fighting you. You could say whatever about me. You could talk about stuff that happened in the gym. You could talk about, you know, a variety of things, but don't talk about like anybody else outside of me. Just aim that right at me. That's kind of how I feel about it. So like in a sense, I do feel like it can go too far, but it is entertaining for us. But as a fighter, if I were a fighter, I wouldn't want you to go outside of me with your trash talk, because that's going to change it. But I mean, for some, like, that does, like you said, the Conor Aldo situation, that directly led into Aldo getting KO'd. Like, I don't care what anybody says, he wouldn't have fought that way. He wouldn't have gone charging in like that if Conor wasn't in his head. He was directly in his head. Same thing with Eddie Alvarez. The moment got too big because Conor made it big, and
he just froze.
He wouldn't have fought like that. He wouldn't have fought like that. So
no, I agree. I do agree about the personal attacks on family and stuff. The only thing I would say to slightly counter that a little bit is, in both situations that happened recently, I mean, Colby got massive clapback for that, and I think it affected his performance. So I think, if anything, it kind of elevated the support behind Leon in a strange way. And it also kind of, like I said, it affected Colby's performance, because you saw the way he froze, the way Leon reacted. He's like, oh man, I think I overstepped it there. And then it could have affected the way he fought, for all we know, because he's thinking, if I get too close to this guy, he's going to take my fucking head off. And like, there was an element of this, so it kind of boomeranged on him in the same way that the whole Ian Gary thing with Jeff Neal, he's taken nothing but shit sandwiches for that since then. So sometimes you play that game, you know, you get friendly fire, and like, that's why I'm kind of okay with it on a general level, because like I said, the court of public opinion is going to win out. The internet's going to win out. The reactions to it are going to win out. And ultimately, it's going to, how you play the game, you never really know how it's going to end up, and it can work both ways.
That's true. That's true. So yeah, on that one, I say yay. Are you saying yay or are you saying no? I'm
going fair part of the game, so I'm saying this. I think we're saying yay. I think I'm going yay as well. You know me, bruv. Like the amount of my entire platform is built on talking the most shit. So I can't turn around and act like a bigger person now. That would be ridiculous.
So if you were a fighter, would you be somebody who, you know, at these press conferences would talk tons of shit?
honestly, as my part of my personality, it would very much depend on who I was fighting.
Yeah.
I think like it would literally come down to, for example, if it was somebody who I really, really dislike, if I was up against an Adesanya or whoever, I'd go straight for the jugular. But, you know, if you're fighting a chill dude, like Robbie Lawler's a really good example. When people used to trash talk that guy, it's like there's no need. He's gonna smile, he's not gonna respond, he's the most chill dude in the sport. Sometimes it just feels like unnecessary, so I'd gauge it based on who I was fighting.
Yeah, I think that if I were a fighter, like, yeah, I would talk shit, but it would be slick. It wouldn't be like super brash or coming up there with an agenda like, you know, Colby did. Like, he had bullet points that he was trying to hit.
It's
really,
like he's got them written on the inside of his arm. It feels like sometimes.
Yeah. I wouldn't do that because it feels manufactured. You know, it would be generic. You know, so like if I really dislike somebody or I have, you know, some sort of issue, then yeah, I'm gonna bring it up. But I wouldn't think that I would be the type of person. But who knows, man? When you become a fighter,
once that money starts coming in, and once you start getting the eyeballs coming in, like who knows where it can go, you know?
You never know. You never know. Okay, so this next one is a very interesting one. Should the UFC finally pull the trigger on a 165-pound division? That's a tough question.
It is a tough one.
It is. So, what I think is, I would say, nah. Even though I think that there are definitely fighters that would go, that are tweeners that would go in that division. You know, someone like Colby Covington would go in that division. Conor now could probably be a part of that division. Islam could be a 2-division champ, but
easily at
but
165.
But I think that what would happen is there's a lot of there's just a lot of work. It would be a lot of work that would go into it. Like, you had to redefine that division, and then you also have to move the 170 division to 175. So you're really shifting 2 divisions, because you can't really have them 5 pounds apart. Because then it starts becoming boxing, and you have a junior welterweight division. So I think that while I do think that would be something that would be cool, I feel like it has to be something that starts from the LFAs, the CFFCs, the smaller regional feeder organizations would have to do it first, and then the UFC does it. So that way they're starting to manufacture these divisions and start to feed into it properly. Yeah. So I would say no, not yet, even though I do see a good reason for it to exist.
Cool. I'm going yay. And I did have a good think about like the pros and the cons on both sides, but ultimately, yeah, I think it should definitely happen. I like the biggest argument that's usually leveled by Slaphead. I'm calling him Slaphead against doing it. It's what you kind of alluded to. You know, it's the UFC's fear of, you know, that the credibility of champions will diminish a little bit and end up being diluted a bit, as it is in boxing. Too many weight classes. You know, there's also the issue that, as you brought up as well, that in order for this to happen, welterweight will logistically have to be pushed up 5 pounds to 175, which for some reason they see as a really big logistical nightmare. Changing a number by 5 sounds quite hard, you know? Personally, I think it's a piss weak excuse. Like, 15 pounds difference between lightweight and welterweight is massive, and like, you're ultimately limiting the potential of fighters that may maximize themselves at an intermittent weight. The reason why they do it in boxing, for as diluted as it is those pounds make a difference, you know? Also, I think like the UFC is kind of going through the paces at the moment, and this will add a little bit more intrigue, a little bit more eyeballs. You're adding something that's ultimately minor in the long run and that fans are actually intrigued by. We'll get more title fights. We'll get more matchups for a roster that's constantly growing in size and arguably in quality. UFC will generate more money from it, so there's something in it for them as well as the fighters. it just feels more consistent. Like 10 pounds between every weight class, all the way up to heavyweight, just feels more balanced. And yeah, I still believe in Kevin Lee. Now playing.
Yeah. Kevin Lee was something that he's a person that jumped out at me too, because that's another person that would have been perfect for that weight class.
Well, so he says, he says a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. You know what about Kevin Lee? Like, I feel like him fighting Renat in his last fight, and getting
that was
demolished like that. Like, I don't know if he was looking at Renat like Renat's not that good. Like that dude is good, and you getting beat by him is not something to really hang your head about. Like,
no, I think the UFC was more dirty.
Really good.
Yeah, I think the UFC was more dirty for putting him in there with him in the first place.
They fed him to him.
That was a feed-in. Like, he wouldn't have. I said it in the build-up as well. I'm like, Kevin Lee does not know what he's getting into right now.
No.
It's a horrible first fight to come back to.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He didn't look great when he fought Diego Sanchez at Eagle FC, but he didn't deserve that. Golly, that was bad. That wasn't right.
That's horrendous.
But yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I just feel like it has to be kind of a slower roll to get it to the UFC. But who knows? I mean, they did pop up with a 125 division kind of out of nowhere. They threw a Ultimate Fighter situation to try to beef it up, and even when they tried to get
the way to introduce it. Yeah.
Could be. It would make people more interested in Ultimate Fighter. Because
can I say one thing while we're on the topic as well? How do you feel? Because obviously we know that women's featherweight is gone.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the UFC adding an Atomweight division?
I would absolutely love it. I would love it because it would give more life to those smaller fighters. Like, Michelle Watterson was never a 115er. No. She's always been too small for that weight class. And when she starts to fight the upper echelon, they're just too big. They're too big for her. It would give new life to people like her, and a lot of small 115ers who came from Invicta, who really should have been fighting in that one. Like, there's a person, I want to say Jillian
Robertson.
What's her last name? Jillian DeCourcy, I think is her name.
DeCourcy, yeah.
Yeah, she I think that she would be a person that would be in that division. There's a lot of small 115 folks that would do really, really well in that. And
I tell you as well, I watch one on a regular basis as well, and their atomweight division is fire. Like the skill level on display. I think the smaller the fighters are, the quicker and more skilled they are. I know it sounds like an overgeneralization.
Mm-hmm. But no, it's true. It's true. From a statistical standpoint, like, I can't remember his name, but there's a guy on Twitter his first name's Nate. I think it's Nate Lashaw, and he does a lot of UFC stats. And flyweight flyweight and middleweight had the most finishes in 2023.
Interesting.
Which is
bizarre. I wouldn't have thought that.
Wouldn't have thought it, but they had a lot. I mean, I'll go back and check and see. We can throw that. I'll make a post about that on YouTube. But I mean, they finish fights and they are extremely technical, and I think that the women would be the same.
Definitely something to look for. I think it will happen sooner or later.
I hope so. Honestly, I would probably prefer to see that first and then see the 165 division.
Makes sense, yeah. Because that could.
But I do want to see it.
That could slot in way more easily. You don't have to tinker with any other divisions. One Ultimate Fighter, and you've basically got the whole division set up. Because I guarantee you, there'd be a flock of women. Women are naturally smaller. You'd have a flock of contenders come in for just that. I reckon.
Yep, the same way that they rated Invicta before for women. I think they do the same thing, and Invicta would pretty much become a feeder organization for that weight class as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It's already there. Groundwork is there, Dana. Let's do it.
He likes easy work, So
yeah, for sure. I mean, It's already written for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the next one, quantity over quality. Should the UFC finally close the doors on the Apex?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I'm not gonna pull any punches on this one. I fucking hate the Apex. Now the thing is, like, I'm really grateful for it. You know, when it came about, obviously we had the lockdown, you know, and that was absolutely shite. So like, without that, the UFC wouldn't have been able to get back to business. And you know, I feel like it should be kept around in case we ever face circumstances like that again. And I get that from a financial perspective, like not having to tear down sets and relocate like weekly is beneficial to the UFC. And you know, under their current quota with ESPN, it makes sense to kind of pump out these low costing cards at like an existing venue. However, like, I don't give a singular shit about the UFC's bottom line. Like, I don't care. Like, you know, the atmosphere at the Apex cards is usually trash. Like, if I wanted to go like back to hanging out in libraries, I would, you know. And while it was interesting, it's kind of interesting being able to hear like coaches screaming like live action plans. It's not really worth it just for that, for me. There's also so many places with massive fan bases. I mean, in the UK, we're lucky to get 2 cards a year, and I say lucky. And there's so many places in Europe, Asia, and across American states as well that haven't seen a card live in years. So for the sake of the atmosphere, for the sake of the sport's continual growth, like, pretty much every week should be a chance for fans to watch it without having to travel to do it. Like, they can keep it around for the Contender Series, which I suspect is going to be expanded anyway, but that should be the be-all and end-all of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, during the pandemic, it was magical because it was the only thing that was going on, and it gave us a different perspective, almost a behind-the-scenes look of how they're doing this and what it sounds like to be that close. But like, we're past that now. And like you said, there's so many places that I feel like have really good fan bases that really need to be introduced to the sport in a more intimate setting. Like, why are we not having cards in these places? Like, especially places that have standout gyms, because that's generally what they do. Like, they go to a place that have a really standout gym and pull a lot of people from that gym and almost create a regional buzz with those fighters and place a card there. Like, let's keep doing that. Let's do that and keep the Apex for the Contender Series, for the Ultimate Fighter when you do it, for things like that. Like, I agree. I don't think that we should be seeing a lot of Apex cards, even though it's the cheaper way to go.
Yeah, it's the cheaper way to go, yeah.
But, you know, we're not here for cheap. And
it also, I mean, they do balance things up, because I imagine the revenue they get from, even though it's a bit of a ball ache to go from place to place, you know, the gate receipts these guys are getting are insane. So I'm sure they make up the cost somewhere along the line.
I'm sure.
But, you know,
I mean UFC, I think Dana even says that all the time. Like, they're breaking records everywhere they go. Like, I mean, bank on that. You know, you're gonna break records.
No, definitely. Yeah, I just think they're getting a bit lazy, and you know, I'd like to see it taken out to the back of the barn and shot in the face. Quite frankly, I'm sick of that place.
Yeah. I agree, man. All right, so this next one: should the UFC force fighters that are past their prime to retire? Man, yeah, yay, yes, absolutely, yes, absolutely, for sure. Okay, so when it comes to fighters that we love, a lot of the things that we love about fighters is their fighting spirit. So when they start taking tons of damage, their ability to fight through taking damage, to, you know, inflict damage on whomever they're fighting and come out the winner. Like, that's something that's magical to us, you know. But the downfall of that is that fighting spirit doesn't really go away. And so we end up seeing people look like Chuck Liddell at the end of their career, or Frankie Edgar at the end of their career, or Donald Cerrone at the end of his career, and now Tony Ferguson. Like, we don't want to see people like going there that, you know, that we care about. Like, we care about these people at this point because we've seen them so much. we shouldn't see BJ Penn, who's an all-time great, Tony Ferguson, who's an all-time great, go on a 7-fight losing streak. We shouldn't see that. Somebody should be responsible enough to say, hey man, listen,
enough's enough.
Your career is your career, but I can't continue to sign off on you doing it here.
Yeah.
And, you know, if they leave the organization and do it somewhere else, then that's their call. But I feel like the UFC should step in, and whether, even if it's a monetary thing where it's like, well, I have 3 fights left on my contract. Okay, cool. We'll pay out your contract. There should be something in there that's a retirement buyout. Like, we're going to pay you that retirement buyout, but we can't keep putting you in there because it's just not a good look for everybody. And while I don't think that, and I talked to Spencer, Spencer Kite, about this on Twitter, and he thought that Tony, you know, had a pretty poor performance. And I actually thought that Tony did okay. I didn't think that he looked BJ Penn level washed.
He didn't get obliterated.
No, I didn't think that he got obliterated.
But not obliterated, yeah.
And honestly, you know, if that fight stayed on the feet in the 3rd round, you know, he might have done something magical. But that being said, I still think it's time. It's time. And I'm glad that Dana said it at the press conference that, you know, he felt that it was time for him to retire. But, you know, they got to put their money where their mouth is, pay them out, and let them go and live the rest of their life with all of their faculties and, you know, not, you know, slurring their words and shit like that. So I say yay.
Do you know what? People are going to think that we've like rehearsed this because this is getting a bit wild. Like, in terms of balanced conversation that we've managed to do today, I'm going to shock you, man. And I'm going to say, I don't think they should. And like, it's like, as you know, as you said, like, you know, like with fighters like Chuck Liddell, BJ Penn, you know, like, you know, obviously we talked about Tony Ferguson. He's the most probably recent example of probably why this whole question came up in the first place. Who should have been rightly told to stop. The UFC like ultimately has no control over it the way things stands now. Like, so for example, if a fighter wants to keep fighting, they've got endless options to carry on doing it. So if the UFC releases them, as you alluded to, they can just go to PFL, the Bellator mix up, you know, go back to regional promotions. Not that most fucking would do that. I mean, it sounds like a nightmare. Or they can go into boxing, or just go and get your face rearranged in bare knuckle. You know, there's so many options. And if the UFC retains their no compete clauses, they're kind of taking away their livelihoods. I mean, some of these fighters get to a point where they've had long careers and you'd think they're in good financial positions, but they're not. The only way it could be a reality is, again, what you alluded to. It's like, if they start paying pensions or giving parachute payments for time served, retirement packages, that kind of stuff, you know. But to be honest, there's more chance of me waking up tomorrow morning with a second dick, to be honest. Like, it's bro, you know, like, you know, they're not gonna, they're so stingy when it comes to anything financial. So like, I think, as cruel as it sounds and as crazy as it sounds, I think really it should come down to a fighter's retirement should be ultimately at their own discretion, or, you know, with the hope that good people around them will give them, you know, their own like Brendan Schaub moments and just strongly advise them to hang it up. But like, you know, it is an intricate thing, and I would say that until the UFC starts putting programs in place to protect these guys that have put a shift in, and a group, because let's be honest, most of these guys are going to be eating out of a straw in like 10 years and slurring their words, and, you know, there's literal brain damage happening in front of our eyes. Until these people are protected, it is what it is right now. I'm sorry to say. It's just they know what they're getting into. Again, sounds cruel, but that's kind of where I lie on it right now. Looking at the pros and cons, that's I would say that it shouldn't be in their hands to force someone to say, nah, you're done, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I definitely see where you're coming from on that for sure, because if it's affecting their livelihood, and my argument is really based on the UFC doing the right thing, giving them something to go away with. But like you said, like, what are the odds of that? I guess I am pie in the sky, wishful thinking. I mean, you know me, like I'm super positive, and I'm like, the UFC is gonna really do like.
They're good guys. They're
not gonna do that shit. And they're gonna let you fight as long as it's
So
certain.
if I wake up with a second dick tomorrow, I'll let you know. Then it's very clear.
And then we know if that happens,
it's around the corner. Yeah,
it is. Like, man, Dana's got an announcement.
I don't know why I use that example. That's such a weird analogy to use, man. I don't know what's on my mind lately. Something wrong with me. Something wrong with me. I swear to God.
Oh man. All right, so this last one. Does the merger between Bellator and PFL make any impact on the MMA landscape in 2024? All right, you take that one first. I got a hot take on this one.
Oh, I'm excited. This one's really, really clear to me. I'm saying that it has virtually no impact whatsoever. Now, if you're asking me, is it important that the UFC has competition and they have fighters that have more options to ply their trades elsewhere and have an option to play the field, I would say definitely. It's good for fighter pay, negotiations, opportunities, 100%. And do the PFL and Bellator do things that are fantastic for the sport? They really do. Like, the tournament format that takes place in PFL and Bellator is something that I'd like to see in the UFC. The smart cage, I think, is the future, in my opinion, in terms of bridging that gap between poor judging and good judging and educating the audience and whatnot. I like the ref cams as well that we see in PFL quite often. I'd like to see that. It's something I've talked about as well, being in the UFC. But ultimately, until they know how to properly market themselves and promote, they are not going to make a dent on the landscape whatsoever. And in fact, I'm going to go one further, and I'm going to predict that by 2025, 2026, both these organizations are going to be in the ground, and that the UFC and ultimately the fans and the fighters are going to be the ones that suffer for it. I just think they don't know what the fuck they are doing.
Yeah. So I agree in the sense of, like, it's almost like you ever see like a movie or see something where somebody's drowning and somebody goes out to save them, and then that person starts drowning too because of the other person thrashing. That's what it feels like with that's exactly what it feels like is going to happen with them. But
it's worse. It's like when the dog's drowning. Someone's dog is drowning, and then you jump in. So it's not even human life for human life. Like
it does feel like that. But I do actually think that it will make an impact. Not from a standpoint of them being co-leaders in the space, which I think is actually kind of dumb for Don Davis to say. Why would you want to be a co-leader? Like, I want to be co-champion with Leon Edwards. No, you don't. Do you want to be champion or you don't? I don't like when he says that. That's admitting defeat out the gate. But where I think that it does make an impact is those prospects. So prospects actually will have somebody to compete, or the UFC will have somebody to compete with when it comes to prospects. And prospects may go there before they go to the UFC. If Bellator and PFL, which they do this, if they partner with these gyms and go and scout these gyms, and these people get a quicker and easier opportunity to go to the PFL or go to Bellator, then they'll get these prospects earlier than the UFC. So in 2024, that'll make a difference, maybe, if they do their work correctly. But that being said, I don't think that the PFL and Bellator will survive. I think that they will die. I think they will drown, and the UFC will drown them. And the reason that the other organizations like the CFFC, LFA, Invicta, Tachi Palace fights back in the day, like the reasons that they stayed alive is because they surveyed the landscape and saw, okay, the UFC is way bigger than we are. How can we partner with them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How can we partner with them, and maybe we can help each other along this journey? At some point, they're going to have to figure that out. The only true competition for the UFC is one.
Definitely.
And they're not even on that level, but they've got their space, they've got their niche, and it's working for them.
And they don't even need to
PFL
compete because of the
they don't.
of where they operate. They're fine. Like they can just they can operate in
they're
their own
good
region.
right where they're at.
100%.
But
yeah,
I think that they do make a dent. It's just it's not a sustaining dent.
It's like a dink.
And yeah, it's a dink. It's literally pea-sized hail. You see it on the car. You'll see it. But
you'd be a bit annoyed, but it's not going to stop you from getting to work like them ones.
Nah, not at all.
Bloody hell. Yeah, do you know what let me just say, I know I dunk on Bellator a lot and PFL a lot, and I watch them both. Like, this is the thing, I clearly know, there are things that I see about these organizations that I like. I want them to do well. It's not like I'm some UFC nut rider who's like, kill them all, I don't want any competition, because I know how bad that is for the whole MMA landscape. It's terrible if there's no competition, if there's nowhere for these fighters to go. So I'm annoyed because I want them to get their shit together. That's what it comes down to. Just don't know if they will.
I mean, so here's a question, and this is something that's actually popped up to me. If the PFL came to you and was like, "Hey, man, we really like the content that you throw out there and the way that you talk about these things," would you consider, doing content for us? We'll pay you, make sure that you have the right equipment. Would you do content for the PFL for us?
Wow. You're really putting me on the spot here. I don't want to burn any bridges. So I'm going to say hell yeah. Definitely. Yeah, like I think they need that. I think we're part of the problem as well, mate, to be honest. Like the fact that most of us are doing content might be something to look to next year, to be honest. Maybe we can start rolling some, because we do watch. It's honestly, I think that's part of the issue. I think even finding that niche on YouTube, even where people exclusively or extensively talk about the PFL and Bellator, is part of why they suck. Like, they need people talking about it.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
I'll do it.
I'm actually probably going to. You do it. I'm actually probably going to make a video on that merger. But I don't know. Like, it's almost like learning a whole new sport, because I don't know any of these people. And I say any of them. I know some of them, but like, I feel like where they fail is they don't tell stories like the UFC does. We don't know enough to have interest.
And you know what I was thinking? I think it's frustrating as like Dana White is as well. He's a big part of that, having his face out there as this maniacal leader who's like takes no shit and all that. Like, Coca has no personality to speak of, and him being exterminated is probably for the good of everyone. He's probably going to still be around a bit, I'd assume.
I'm sure, yeah.
But I don't even know who the PFL head is, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Like, there's no personality there, and it just seems to make a meal out of everything.
Yeah. Don Davis is the dude that's over it. Don with two N's. He's the one that's over the PFL, and I mean, he's trying to drum things up.
I'm amazed they haven't run out of money already.
Like, I know they're throwing a lot of money around.
Deep pockets.
It's feeling real elite XC of them. Like, I feel like this is going down the wrong path. But we'll see what happens.